What's going on? Jake with Chain Genius back for another episode of the Crypto Daily Update on a Saturday afternoon. So thank you for tuning in and watching. And what I wanted to say is just thank you so much for those that are sticking with me and watching all of these videos, especially while we're slogging through this bear of a market. So let's hop into it. First thing is, market's still doing terrible. In fact, it might even be doing worse. Bitcoin's dropped below $8,000. Ethereum's down below 600. Sucks. Basically, it's just a no good, very bad day per usual. We're down at a $313 billion market cap, and what's really interesting to look at especially is Syndicator. One of my favorite projects is actually doing okay, 2% gain for the day. But out of the top 100, only 4 had a green day, and Minex Coin, Syndicator, Emmercoin, and of course Tether, that doesn't really count. So really we're talking about 3. And in general, it's depressing to watch. I mean, we're all sitting here, we're all dealing with it. It sucks. But one of the big things to keep track of is that Bitcoin's dominance is still slowly creeping up. It's gone from 35 a couple of weeks ago, hung around 41.7 for a little while, and now it's finally creeping up to that 43%, which is pretty huge because even though the market's going down, it shows that people are feeling more comfortable with Bitcoin, whether that's because of the recent Lightning Network upgrade, more SegWit adoption, which is also dependent, or Lightning's dependent on that, or it's a multitude of other factors, lower transaction counts, meaning it's faster and cheaper and all that good stuff. Either way, it's just something to keep an eye on. And just to layer on the bad news as we're going through this today, Bittrex is officially going to be removing 52 different wallets as of March 31st. And they state that most of this is often because there's low liquidity, not a lot of demand in the market, and a lot of these coins are pretty much no names, penny stocks, if you were, single Satoshi coins that don't really have a lot of tremendous value. But what's really interesting to consider, at least in my opinion, is that Bittrex is probably, being a US-based company, they're probably under a lot of fire from the US regulatory teams. So it wouldn't be surprising, especially since the SEC recently came out saying that they're going to be targeting exchanges in the US because you're selling unlicensed securities, which you need a license for. Again, that's totally my opinion, but it'd be interesting to see if that's kind of the issue. This comes on the heels of Poloniex recently getting bought by Circle, and also probably why Poloniex for a very long time didn't list any new coins, is they were trying to make sure they were above board and aren't going to get themselves into any hot water leading up to a merger and acquisition. And it's the same thing for Bittrex. Although they're probably not getting acquired, I would be very surprised if this isn't part of an auditing process where they go through and wipe out all the questionable or bad coins to protect themselves, because you saw them do this maybe 3-4 months ago when they finally started listing coins again, and that was after what is presumed, or the rumor says, was just a very heavy auditing process. On the backs of this, CoinBase released, like right after the announcement of all the delistings, they went ahead and republished and updated their process for adding new coins. And I'm not going to get into it. You can sit here and read this if you'd like. They have a framework making sure that it's passing the legal and risk review of the recommended asset, and then it's presented to the executive team for approval. Blah, blah, blah. Then they build it out. They announce it on Twitter. And this is interesting because they got a lot of heat for listing Bitcoin Cash without really making a preemptive announcement. And the key takeaway from this is just as of the posting, which was yesterday, no, as of March 16th, we have not made any decisions for adding new assets. The Internal Asset Selection Committee has been assessing assets using the digital asset framework, but no assets have been recommended yet. Interesting to note, everyone is pumping the brakes. Unless you're a decentralized exchange or overseas like Binance or KuCoin, you're not really listing any more assets. The other thing I wanted to talk about today is the drama going on with Mr. Ian Balina. For those that don't know, Diary of a Made Man, Ian Balina, he's really heavy into the ICO space. He tries to take a Moneyball approach where he applies logic and due diligence and an actual numerical framework for how he rates ICOs. And he's done a pretty good job for it, and I think it's been really powerful for the community to help. But he recently made an announcement that he fully sold most of his ICX icon tokens, except for the bonus tokens, which are locked up. This caused a tremendous amount of drama because he was a heavy bag holder for this group. And Icon is a platform play out of Korea, South Korea, really solid project, but this caused a lot of hot water because people were really feeling that he dumped the market, and I don't agree with that personally. So of course this caused a tremendous amount of drama in which the CEO of Icon actually stepped in and made a formal announcement. He talked about the fact that, listen, we respect Ian. They did ask him to step away from his capacity of like being involved with the project. He's not an advisor. So they asked him to just kind of step away. So he sold all of his tokens except for the bonus ones. But it was interesting because they made sure to come out and like save face publicly and say that, listen, we didn't ever pay him. He was never promoting the project officially from us. He was just a fan of the project. And they went back and forth and had a big conversation about it. And Ian even responded a number of hours later saying that there was a misunderstanding. Basically, since the Telegram is not the official channel for the Icon team to be running their communications through, there's a lot of FUD and misunderstanding that was coming through there. And he basically goes through and continues to back up his reasoning and involvement with the project, as well as saying that in his future Diary of a Made Man series, which is his vlog, he's going to actually publish some of his behind the scenes. And there's some pros and cons with the way Ian does his things. I respect him quite a bit. The man took an idea and focused on one single thing of ICOs, and he's done a really good job promoting and building that community. However, being such a big name in the space for ICOs, he's got to be very careful about what he does and doesn't say publicly or do publicly, especially since he's publishing his address. That puts him under a microscope, as it were. So he's got to be really careful about how he can affect prices in this market. Moving on to the next piece of fun news is a piece from CoinDesk talking about so long ICOs, hello airdrops. And this is something I've been starting to see a lot more is as public sales are kind of disappearing in favor of raising everything privately, which is two-factor. One, it allows you to protect yourselves by only dealing with accredited US investors or foreign investors where there's less regulation. It also allows you to, if the SEC or the CFTC are saying everything are securities or commodities, this gets you out of hot water in the way that we're giving away these free tokens. We're not selling them. So if it's a security, we're just giving it away. The problem that comes up from this is that, so like Ontology, for example, gave away 1,000 of its ONT tokens, which was worth a little over $1,000 as of today. It's like $1.30 something. But what's interesting about this is, even though it's a great idea, what it does is when you do an airdrop, it can generate a couple different things. And this is a great quote. It combines the best of a paid referral program with stock options. Potential users get paid for joining or using the network and have the potential upside if the network increases in value. And that's great. It creates some liquidity. It drives user engagement. It drives user adoption. And it also, everyone gets some free money, which is great. Who doesn't love free money? The issue, though, is even still, in the US, airdropping a security is a legally problematic area to be in. So I am guessing that even US non-accredited investors for airdrops are probably going to run into additional hot water here. I don't see it, because if it's classified as a security, you can't just give away securities, because even if you do and you're not selling them, the next problem is, how are you or I, as non-accredited investors, going to sell those? And if we are going to sell them, where do we sell them except on a licensed exchange? And there's not many of those out. T0 from Overstock, but as of a few days ago, if not yesterday, they might have to rescind the entire ICO and give everything up and call the whole thing off. Basically, they've come under the gun of the SEC's investigation as well. So it's going to be really interesting because, yeah, still many advise against airdrops for right now. And again, that's mainly because if it's classified as a security, even though you're not selling, you can't just give away securities for free. Unfortunately, in the US, that's not how it works. Some good news in this terrible space is Monero is being tested on the Ledger wallet, which is awesome. For those that don't have a Ledger wallet, I highly recommend you grab one. There's a link below in the description if you want to use me as a referral. But Monero's been one that, because of the ring signatures and the way their consensus mechanism works, It's been extremely difficult to integrate, and it's been spearheaded by members of the Monero team as well as the development community as a whole. But that's really huge. Monero has had very limited options of either running your own or using some less than amazing wallets in order to store your Monero. And Ledger is a product I personally use all the time. Actually, got mine right here. But it's just a huge thing. Finally, a good breakthrough. I've been waiting for this for a very long time, waiting for a way to put another coin onto my Ledger, which I absolutely love. Next thing, Binance is once again in the news, announcing a Dexathon as a hackathon for their decentralized exchange, but they're throwing down up to $1 million in USD, of course, paid out in BNB, given at the time of the market and the price. But what they're doing is, the goal is pretty much to have people develop for them and build out some base frameworks for the project. And of course, if you win or if you do a really good job, you could potentially get a job with Binance as well. So that's awesome. The biggest thing about this, though, is Netflix did this a number of years ago with their algorithm. So Netflix had a competition where their recommendation algorithm was good, but they thought they could do better. And they basically held a $1 million competition stating whatever teams, and it didn't have to be centralized teams. They said you can form teams through forums, online, we don't care. But when you submit your algorithm in updates, whoever does the best increase in recommendations to our users will get paid $1 million. And it turns out that the best team, the team that ended up winning, increased the efficiency of the algorithm something like 10 or 15%, which, although that's a pretty small percentage from a high level, when you're edging out bits and pieces here, 11%, 12%, 15% are massive gains. So Netflix, for spending a paltry sum of $1 million, basically crowdsourced a great solution. So I'm excited to see how Binance handles this, because the reality is, at least on paper, Binance is stating they want to step away from the decentralized exchange, and over time it will act as more of a community involved in managed project, which is really how it should be. Whether or not they do that is to be seen, so hopefully they follow through with that. Next on the chopping block is Genesis Capital, is an arm out of Genesis Trading, and they already have they started a lending arm, and they already have $100 million outstanding in loans, which is huge. Having started as of, I think it was 2 weeks ago, yeah, right here. Business was launched 2 weeks ago. They already have $100 million outstanding, which is huge. The thing is, since there's not a lot of tools for people to short Bitcoin, this has effectively become a way to short Bitcoin. So someone with a large amount of capital will go to Genesis Trading, take out a loan for, let's say, hundreds of thousands of dollars in Bitcoin. They get those Bitcoin. They then turn around and sell them. And what that does is it suppresses the price, because they're destroying liquidity on a single exchange. And if it's a big enough loan, maybe they do that on a few different exchanges. So what that does is suppress the price. And then as the price goes down, since they have to pay back the loan in Bitcoin, well, now they'll rebuy those Bitcoin at a lower price and then turn around and pay back their loan. So it creates an arbitrage opportunity, which is awesome for them. And if you're playing the home game here, you'll notice that there's a lot of firms that are doing this. Another article that came out, depending on where you read it yesterday, today, is secretive Wall Street firm includes Bitcoin in its traded assets, which is Jane Street Capital. I actually have a buddy that worked there for a number of years. And Jane Street Capital has maybe $5 trillion under management. They handle $13 billion daily in equities across the entire world. There's not a lot known about them, but they're very good at what they do, which is arbitrage. And taking the last article I just talked about, that's a really huge thing to consider, because as they enter the space, if they're doing what these other firms are doing, where they can just take massive liquidity pools and drive the price of Bitcoin down and then capitalize on that shorted position, they're going to do it. They're a business. They want to make money. So what's really interested is Jane Street Capital's MO, like their bread and butter play out of their book, is to create arbitrage. And with cryptocurrencies, that's really difficult usually, because when you try to arbitrage, because transactions are slower than established stock exchanges or traditional equities, you need to have a large enough pool of capital or crypto assets on each of the major exchanges so that if an arbitrage opportunity presents itself, you're able to execute on that trade and still have enough liquidity to continue trading. And then at the end of a period of time, maybe at the end of the day, you settle all of your accounts and rebalance your wallet on each of those exchanges. So unfortunately for most of us poorer folk, that's just really difficult to do because, again, unless you're able to keep a minimum of, let's call it 1 Bitcoin per major exchange, say there's 30 top major exchanges, that's 30 Bitcoin you have to have sitting around. And then if you have one on each one and you sell this one and buy this one, now you have nothing over here. So you need to have maybe not one, but two. All of a sudden you're at 60 Bitcoin. But really you want more than that because if your arbitrage opportunities are less than 10%, if they're in the single digits, in order to make any sort of meaningful return, you actually need more than that. So instead of 2, maybe you need 10 Bitcoin per exchange. All of a sudden that's 300 Bitcoin. It quickly scales out of the reach of most parties. So it's really interesting to see that Jane Street Capital is entering the space, but it's also not too surprising. Lastly, since I'm machine gunning you guys, since I missed yesterday's post, this is a 2 for 1, is PayPal's Peter Thiel. For those who don't know, he's just a monster in the investment space. He is long on Bitcoin and bullish, and he basically said that it's a hedge against the world falling apart. So he views it as a store of value, traditional gold, that type of play instead of as a currency. Don't want to get into the semantics about it, doesn't matter, but he's bullish on it, basically saying he's less concerned with the short-term price performance, more that longing Bitcoin is now key. Despite this, he gives a probability of up to 80%, whatever the hell that means, that the world's first cryptocurrency would ultimately become worthless. So it's a little bit of a mixed answer, but he does feel bullish on the long term. I guess really long term, he feels that it's going to become worthless. Who knows? Either way, he carries a lot of clout in the space. And the other thing is PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, one of the big four, has stated that they're going to start auditing the space to make sure they stay relevant. And what they're going to try to do is just act as an independent validation that the technology is functioning as needed, make sure that they're doing internal technology audits for other companies as they enter the space. Basically, all they're going to do is just try to help other teams and companies comply with the law, which again fits in their wheelhouse with what's going on and how they operate day to day. So that's all I've got at the moment. Thank you so much for checking this out on a Saturday afternoon. If you like what I'm saying, tell your friends, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, leave a comment. And in case you hadn't noticed, I finally got a green screen, I got a new light, got some upgrades to my studio here, so hopefully the quality continues to improve. And lastly, I'm going to be turning this into a podcast shortly so you can listen to this on the go. That's all I got for now. Take it easy. Peace.